At around 10 o'clock one morning in 1930, two bank robbers serving 25-year sentences walked up to the front gate of Leavenworth Penitentiary. They handed a new guard official passes bearing their photographs, and he let them leave. The documents were forged, and the prisoners suspected of helping create them worked inside Leavenworth's records and photography departments. His name was George Kelly. 4 months later, Kelly was free, and meeting the men escaped inside a St. Paul speakeasy. 5 days after the meeting, armed robbers escaped from a Minnesota bank with more than $100,000, and Kelly was suspected of being one of them. How did a bootlegger sent to Leavenworth emerge on the path of becoming Machine Gun Kelly? In January 1928, George Kelly was not yet the nationally feared criminal newspapers would call Machine Gun Kelly. He was a successful bootlegger who had spent years transporting illegal liquor, bribing officials, and talking his way out of trouble. Each time he escaped serious punishment, he became more convinced that charm, money, and the right connections could protect him. That confidence finally failed him in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Police arrested Kelly at the home of his bootlegging partner, Little Steve Stevens, and Stevens' former wife, Bess. Kelly was already wanted for failing to appear in a court on a liquor charge. All three were convicted of violating the National Prohibition Act. Bess was sent to a federal women's prison in West Virginia, while Kelly and Little Steve received 3-year sentences at Leavenworth Penitentiary. Leavenworth was the largest maximum security federal prison in the country. Its 40-foot walls surrounded more than 1,500 inmates, including experienced bank and train robbers such as Thomas Holden, Francis Keating, and Vern Miller. Kelly listened closely to their stories and questioned them about how robberies were planned and why criminals were caught. He was eventually assigned to the prison's records and photography departments, placing him near inmate photographs, identification files, and the paperwork used by prisoners authorized to work outside the walls. Kelly did not want to leave Leavenworth and return to being an ordinary liquor runner. He wanted the knowledge, connections, and reputation needed to move into more profitable crime. More importantly, he looked for ways to make himself useful to the men he admired. His position in the records and photography departments gave him access most prisoners did not have. Thomas Holden and Francis Keating were each serving 25-year sentences. If Kelly helped him escape, he could prove that he was more than an admirer. He would become someone hardened criminals could trust and might remember after his release. Helping Holden and Keating escape Leavenworth would require more than slipping past a careless guard. Anyone caught assisting them could lose his own chance of freedom. The two men needed official-looking outside work passes bearing photographs convincing enough to survive inspection at the main gate. Those materials were normally kept inside the same records and photography departments where Kelly worked. That placed him in a dangerous position. He may have had the access they needed, but using it would leave evidence pointing directly toward him. Kelly was already nearing the end of his sentence. Helping two convicted bank robbers could earn their trust or keep him behind those walls for years longer. Around 10 o'clock one morning, Holden and Keating put on heavy prison work coats and approached Leavenworth's main gate. Each man carried an outside work pass bearing his photograph. A newly assigned guard examined the documents and allowed them to walk out. Their absence was not discovered until later that afternoon. Searchers found the discarded coats and forged passes about a half a mile from the prison. Investigators also learned that photographs from the records and photography departments had been used to create the documents. Suspicion immediately fell on Kelly. Officials could not prove that he helped produce the passes, but they removed him from both departments. The escape has succeeded. Holden and Keating were free, and investigators were correct. Kelly had demonstrated his value to criminals far more experienced than he was. 4 months after the escape, Kelly was released from Leavenworth and returned to Kansas City on July 10, 1930. He traveled to St. Paul and reunited with Holden and Keating at the Green Lantern Saloon. 5 days later, 5 armed men robbed the Bank of Wilmar in Minnesota and escaped with more than $100,000 in cash and bonds. The robbery was never officially solved, but Kelly was among the men suspected by participating. By September, he had joined Holden, Keating, and Vern Miller and Harvey Bailey in the robbery of the Untomwa Savings Bank in Iowa. The men Kelly had met inside Leavenworth were now his criminal partners outside it. George Kelly entered Leavenworth as a bootlegger. He left with experienced bank robbers as associates and a far more ambitious criminal future ahead of him. The prison intended to end his criminal career may have been the place where Machine Gun Kelly truly began. Thank you for watching and liking this video and subscribing to the channel. If you would like to support the Eclectic Historical Society, you can join our Patreon or order merch at theeclectichistoricalsociety.com. With that being said, this is the Eclectic Historical Society, and remember, history is lost if it's not repeated.